The phone rang 3 times before anyone answered. On the other end of the line, Renato Montero held the device with the same firmness with which he held contracts, decisions, and the lives of hundreds of employees. He was sitting in the leather armchair in his office on the 22nd floor of a mirrored building in downtown Sao Paulo, and the entire city seemed small from there. The coffee was already cold on the mahogany table. He hadn't even tasted it. There were more urgent things to deal with on that gray Tuesday morning, and one of them was the cleaning lady, Dona Marta. That's what everyone called her in the mansion. A woman in her 50s who cleaned the floors, tidied the rooms, did the laundry, and disappeared before anyone could look her in the eye. Renato barely remembered her face. He only knew that she wore a faded blue apron, that she spoke softly, and that his wife Beatrice was always complaining about her. She doesn't clean the living room windows properly," Beatrice would say, running her finger along the surface as if searching for fault. "She forgets to change the bathroom towels. She has no manners." Renato never verified any of these accusations. He trusted Beatrice with household matters as much as he trusted the directors with company matters. He delegated. And when Beatrice said that morning that she wanted the cleaning lady out, he didn't ask why. He simply picked up the phone, dialed the number the secretary had given him, and waited. 3 rings. And then a thin, somewhat hoarse, somewhat timid voice answered. "Hello?" It wasn't Marta. It was a child. Renato frowned. "Who's speaking?" "It's Lucia. Who are you?" "I need to speak with Dona Marta. Is she there?" There was a short silence, filled with something Renato couldn't name. Then, the girl said, with the naturalness that only children possess when speaking about the unbearable, "Mommy's lying down. She can't get up today. Her arm is very swollen because of the chemotherapy." Renato pulled the phone away from his ear for a moment, as if the phrase had physical weight. Chemotherapy. The word hung in the air between him and the window, between him and the city below, between him and everything he thought he knew about the woman who cleaned his house. "Chemotherapy?" he repeated almost in a whisper. "Yes, Mommy has cancer. It's been a few months now, but she doesn't like anyone to know. She says that if they find out, they'll feel sorry for her, and she doesn't want pity. She wants to work." The girl spoke with a seriousness that didn't match her age. Renato guessed 9, maybe 10 years old. She had the diction of someone who had learned to fend for herself early, someone who had already called a pharmacy, heated up soup by herself, covered her mother with a blanket when she slept trembling after a session. He swallowed something that wasn't saliva. It was shame. "Lucia, are you alone with her?" "Yes. My brother goes to school in the morning. I stay with Mommy until she gets better. Then she'll go clean other people's houses." Other people's houses. The phrase was simple and devastating. Renato looked around his office. The leather, the mahogany, the view, everything clean, everything organized, everything maintained by hands he had never noticed. And now those hands were swollen, purple, fighting against something no cleaning product could remove. He hung up the phone without saying anything more. He sat there, silent for several minutes. The coffee was still cold. The city remained indifferent. But inside Renato, something had shifted. It wasn't yet an earthquake. It was a thin crack, the kind that appears in seemingly perfect walls and that only those who look closely can see. That night, he came home early. Beatrice was in the living room, leafing through a decorating magazine. The house smelled of synthetic lavender. Everything was in its place, except for something Renato couldn't name. "Did you call the cleaning lady?" Beatrice asked without looking up. "I did. And I didn't fire her." Beatrice finally looked. "Why?" Renato didn't answer immediately. He took off his jacket, placed it on the back of the chair, and said, "She's sick, Beatrice. She has cancer. She's undergoing chemotherapy." The silence that followed was unlike any other silence in that house. It wasn't the silence of comfort, nor of indifference. It was the silence of embarrassment. Beatrice looked back at the magazine, turned a page, and simply said, "That's not our problem, Renato. She doesn't clean properly. There are other cleaning ladies." He stood there, looking at the woman with whom he had shared 18 years of his life. And for the first time, he saw something that had always been there, but that he had never wanted to see. There was a hardness in her eyes that wasn't strength. It was armor. An armor built with dinners at expensive restaurants, international trips, designer handbags, and the absolute certainty that the world existed to serve her. Renato went upstairs and entered his daughter's room. Carolina, 9 years old, the same age as Lucia, was sitting on the enormous bed, surrounded by cushions, watching a cartoon on her tablet. She had everything that money could buy. But he wondered there, for the first time, what did she have that money couldn't buy? "Dad, are you sad?" Carolina asked, raising her eyes. "No, daughter, I'm thinking." "Thinking about what?" "About a girl your age who takes care of her sick mother while her mother can't get out of bed." Carolina was silent. Then she said, with that accidental wisdom of children, "She must be very brave." The next day, Renato did something he had never done before. He drove to the address, listed on Marta's file. He didn't send a driver, he didn't send an assistant, he didn't send a message. It was him, in a suit and Italian shoes, in a car worth more than the entire block. The neighborhood was a labyrinth of narrow streets, peeling walls and tangled electrical wires hanging in the sky like exposed veins. Marta's apartment was on the second floor of a building without an elevator, without a doorman, and without paint. The stairs creaked under Renato's weight as if it were unfamiliar with someone of that size there. He knocked on the door. Lucia opened the door. The girl was small, thin, with her hair tied in a crooked ponytail. She wore an oversized t-shirt, probably her mother's, and held a dish towel in her hands. She looked at Renato from head to toe, without fear, without reverence, with curiosity. "Are you the man from the phone?" "Yes. Mom's awake today, but she's weak." Renato went inside. The entire apartment fit into the living room of his house. The kitchen was a counter with 2 dishes dripping. The sofa had a folded blanket, a sign that someone slept there, and the walls were covered with photos. Many photos. Marta with the children, baby Lucia, the older boy on his first day of school. None of the photos had expensive frames. None had filters. None were posed. They all had truth. Marta was in the bedroom, lying on a thin mattress covered with a floral sheet. Her right arm was bandaged. Her face, thin and marked, had the pallor of someone fighting an invisible war every day. When she saw Renato at the door, her eyes widened and she tried to stand up. "Mr. Renato, for God's sake, forgive me, I didn't know you. Don't get up." She stopped. She stayed there, half sitting, half lying down, with moist eyes and her hands crossed in her lap, as if awaiting a sentence. Because in Marta's life, visits like that always brought bad news. Employers didn't visit maids, not in that world. "Mrs. Marta, why didn't you tell me you were sick?" She lowered her eyes. "Because I need the job, Mr. Renato. If I tell you, I'll lose it. And if I lose it, I can't afford the medicine that the health insurance doesn't cover. I can't pay for Pedro's school. I can't pay for anything." Her voice didn't tremble. It was firm. It was the voice of a woman who had already cried all the tears available and now functioned in dry mode, in survival mode. Lucia appeared at the door with a glass of water. She handed it to her mother carefully, like a miniature nurse. Then he sat on the floor beside the bed and stayed there in silence, like someone keeping vigil, like someone who has learned that being close is the only thing they can offer. Renato looked at that scene and felt something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't pity. Pity was easy, it was cheap, it was what anyone would feel and forget on the way back home. What he felt was recognition. He recognized there, in that cramped room, smelling of medicine and dampness, something that was missing in his 600 square meter mansion. Presence, love without a frame, dignity without an audience. He went home that day and didn't say anything to Beatrice, but the next morning he called his lawyer, then the manager of the company's health plan, then a private oncology clinic. In 3 days, Marta had complete treatment covered. A health plan she could never afford on her own, and the guarantee that her job would be waiting for her when she could return. Beatrice found out a week later. The argument was silent and lethal, as are all real arguments between people who no longer love each other but pretend they do. "You spent our money on a maid?" "I spent it on a human being." "Don't play the saint, Renato. You never cared about her before." "I know. And that's the problem." Beatrice crossed her arms. "If that's how you want to live, fine. But don't ask me to participate in this fantasy." Renato didn't ask, because it wasn't a fantasy. It was the first real thing he had done in years. The following weeks were strange. Renato began visiting Marta on Saturdays. He brought fruit, medicine, and sometimes books that Lucia asked for. The girl read everything. She devoured pages like someone eating after fasting. She asked about difficult words, about maps, about how airplanes worked. And Renato, who spent entire meetings feeling nothing, found himself smiling on the way back. On one of these visits, Lucia said something he never forgot. They were sitting on the building's stairs because the apartment was too small for everyone, and the girl looked at him and asked, "Mr. Renato, are you happy?" He hesitated to answer, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he knew too much. "Not always, Lucia." "Mom isn't either, but she says we don't need to be happy all the time. We just need someone to come back to." Renato thought of the mansion. He thought of the wide corridors, the empty rooms, the silence that wasn't peace, but absence. He thought of Beatrice, who slept turned to the other side. He thought of Carolina, who had everything and hugged her pillow at night as if it were the only truly soft thing in her life. And he thought of Marta, who had so little and yet had so much. The treatment began to show results in the 3rd month. Marta regained her color, her appetite, the strength in her arms that had scrubbed other people's floors for 20 years. When she returned to work, she asked to speak with Renato. He received her in his office. She entered slowly, wearing her pressed blue apron, her old but clean shoes, and a dignity that no Italian suit could buy. Mr. Renato, I came to thank you. But I also came to say something. Say it? I don't want you to do this out of pity, because pity fades. And when it fades, the person who received it is more alone than before. He looked her in the eyes, perhaps for the first time truly. It's not pity, Mrs. Marta. It's shame. Shame for having spent years without seeing you, without asking the names of your children, without knowing that you existed beyond the clean floors and the changed towels. Marta didn't cry. She simply nodded slowly, as if accepting an apology that came late, but came nonetheless. In the following months, something changed in Renato's house. It wasn't a spectacular change. There was no speech, no Hollywood epiphany, no soundtrack. It was something small, almost imperceptible, like a plant sprouting in a crack in the asphalt. Carolina began asking to visit Lucia. The two became friends in a way that ignored all the rules the world tried to impose. Lucia taught Carolina how to cook rice. Carolina lent books to Lucia. They laughed at things no adult would understand, and in that laughter, there was something that cleansed the air around them. Beatrice filed for divorce in November. She said Renato had changed, and she no longer recognized the man she had married. He didn't disagree. He simply said, "Maybe the man you married never really existed. Maybe I exist now." She took half of everything, the jewelry, the cars, the beach house. Renato didn't fight for any of that. He only fought for Carolina, and he won. On the night Beatrice left the mansion with her Italian leather suitcases, Carolina was in her room, sitting on the bed, phone in hand. Renato came in and sat beside her. "Dad, did Mom really leave?" "Yes, honey. Is she coming back?" "I don't know, but I'll stay." Carolina rested her head on his shoulder. And there, in that small gesture, Renato felt something that no $1,000,000 contract had ever given him. Belonging. The certainty of being needed by someone. Not for the money, not for the name, not for the position, just for being there. Months later, on a Saturday morning, Renato was in the kitchen trying to make pancakes, something he had never done in his life, when the doorbell rang. It was Marta, with Lucia beside her. The girl was holding a crooked cake, covered with an uneven chocolate glaze, and smiling as if carrying a trophy. "It's your birthday, isn't it?" said Lucia. "Mom helped me make it." Renato looked at the cake. It was imperfect, asymmetrical, with the chocolate dripping down one side. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, because no one in 52 years of life had ever made a cake for him. In the mansion, the cakes came from French bakeries with perfect layers, imported fillings, and no meaning. That cake had Lucia's hands on it. It smelled of a small kitchen. He had the care of someone who doesn't have much but offers everything. He crouched down to the girl's level and said, his voice choked with emotion, "Thank you, Lucia." She tilted her head, as she did when she thought adults were strange. "Are you crying?" "No, I'm feeling." "Feeling what?" He thought for a moment. He looked at Marta, who was in the doorway. With her blue apron and her eyes that had seen too much and yet still retained an inexplicable gentleness. He looked at Carolina, who had run down the stairs and was now hugging Lucia like a sister. He looked at the crooked cake on the marble countertop. "I feel like I've come home," he said, "for the first time." Marta smiled. It was a small, restrained smile like everything about her, but there was a silent acceptance there, a peace that needed no explanation. She had survived cancer, poverty, contempt, invisibility, and there she was, standing there, whole with her daughter beside her and a cake in her hands, not as a victory, as a presence. Renato looked out the kitchen window. The mansion was enormous, and much of it remained empty. But the kitchen, that morning, was full of voices, of melted chocolate, of girls' laughter, of something he had taken 52 years to understand. It wasn't the size of the house that made a home. It was the hands that made the cake, the eyes that waited at the door, the child who answered the phone and told the truth that no adult dared to say, the woman who cleaned other people's floors and maintained her own immaculate dignity, even when the world tried to take everything from her, including her health. Lucia cut the first piece and placed it on Renato's plate. Carolina placed the second on Marta's plate. And there, around that marble countertop that had already hosted dinners for 100 guests, 4 people ate crooked cake with their hands, laughing at nothing and everything, as if the world outside didn't exist. And perhaps, at that moment, it didn't even exist. Because the real world, the only one that matters, fit entirely within that kitchen. And it was made of things that no million could buy. Presents, truth, and imperfect cake. And the sound of a 9-year-old girl who one day answered the phone and, unknowingly, saved not her mother, but the man on the other end of the line.